Derek Esposito's life wasn't good or bad. It was a perfectly average, insignificant existence. Well, maybe it tended to be a little more towards bad most of the time. His father was bipolar, disappearing into his bedroom for days on end during a depressive phase. He'd only come outside to eat, use the bathroom, and engage in the occasional bout of rageful violence against his unlucky sons. When he was euphoric, Derek's father worked like a madman. He had limitless ambition, but unfortunately, he lacked both business and social skills. That meant all his projects were doomed to failure. Whenever he decided to actually take his medication, Derek's dad was a couch potato that would only go to work to avoid looking bad in front of the neighbors. In sickness or in health, though, he was the textbook example of an abusive father. His sons were a disgrace in his eyes. They never studied hard enough, they lacked discipline and respect, and he was always there to remind them how useless they were. He would yell at them for the slightest mistake, saying that they were parasites that leached off his hard work. And when words weren't enough, there was no teacher like his leather belt. Derek and Carl quickly learned how to fend for themselves. Their absent-minded mother had ignored them right after giving birth, choosing instead to live shut away in her bedroom as far as possible from her spouse's tantrums. Derek was the older brother by 2 years. As such, he tried his best to take care of his little brother. They grew up watching shows and reading stories about heroes who protected the weak and upheld justice, but no hero ever appeared to save them. Every week they were forced to go to church to worship a benevolent God and his Son, the Savior of all mankind. But no matter how much they prayed or how good they were, no miracle occurred to make their lives better. God and his Son were too busy for the Esposito kids. They stopped believing in heroes. Instead of wasting time with prayers, they studied. School was their one refuge. But even that couldn't last forever. Once they hit middle school, it didn't even take a month before the bullying started. Their cheap clothes and sullen attitudes made them easy targets. They were so used to being tossed around and insulted that they didn't even bother trying to fight back. Derek's life hadn't been pleasant before this. After a month of the new torture, he knew he couldn't take it. He tried to make things better. He reported his father's abuses to social services with an anonymous email, but the overworked social worker made a brief visit to their place and never came back. Then Derek tried to end the bullying by reporting the aggressors to a teacher, who reported it to the principal. The principal didn't want to bother with what he deemed childish pranks, so he called Derek's parents to inform them of the problem, hoping he wouldn't hear about it again. At least his wish came true. Derek took an extra beating for not being man enough to face his own problems. "Are you an idiot? Haven't I taught you anything? Never delegate! If you want something done right, do it yourself!" his father yelled. Derek had never felt so helpless and desperate. That night, he bawled his eyes out until he fell asleep. The next day, he felt different, clear-headed like never before. Despair was useless. He needed a plan. It would take years to realize that something inside of him had died. He was no longer able to trust, hope, or develop any kind of kinship. He was surrounded by enemies, and to survive, Derek needed to be able to fight back. Derek asked his father to let him join a dojo and learn martial arts. To his surprise, he didn't have to beg. His old man was glad his wimpy excuse for a child was finally interested in becoming a man. His only condition was that Derek couldn't quit for at least 1 year, otherwise he'd have to pay for it himself. Not only did Derek start practicing Aikido, he'd also wake up 2 hours early every single day to do push-ups, squats, sit-ups, and run until he was out of breath. In a few months, he was able to do 100 push-ups, sit-ups, and squats, and run for at least 5 miles before going to school. Aikido turned out to be a perfect solution for his situation. Low-level training was mainly focused on self-defense, but there was plenty of space for attacking and fighting dirty. By practicing martial arts, he finally discovered something he was good at. He was not particularly nimble, nor a fast learner. His hand-to-eye coordination was average at best. His talent lay in the ability to pinpoint when and how to hit someone, or block a defensive maneuver. Derek was always able to grasp the killing moves on his first try, sometimes even before the sensei completed the practical demonstration. It was an exciting, yet disappointing discovery, since his only talent had no practical use. Even if Aikido tournaments could make him money, hits to the groin, eyes, and trachea were universally forbidden. For months, Derek kept training hard while keeping a low profile at school, planning his next move. As the first semester ended, Derek stopped hiding from the bullies. He started zinging back every insult they threw at him. Derek never went to the bathroom alone, always keeping eyes on a nearby adult. He gave them no opportunities to ambush him. After a full day of sassing back, Derek's enemies were outraged. That's when he made his move. "I've had enough of your shit," he told them. "Meet me in an hour behind the grocery store between Lincoln and 3rd. Unless you're scared." "You got a death wish, bitch? You're on. The fight's just between you and the 3 of us, all right? No extra help." Derek nodded, though he knew they were lying, and he was right. When the bullies came to the fight, they brought along 2 extra people. Derek was waiting for them, leaned against the wall with his arms crossed. "There you are. I was starting to think you stood me up." They laughed. "Sorry we're late. We needed to invite a couple more guests to the party. You don't mind, do you?" Derek shrugged. "No problem. Trash is trash. I chose this alley because it's equipped with enough dumpsters to accommodate all your friends." The last line hit a nerve. They charged at him blindly. "Don't let him escape! Let's show him who's the trash!" They fell into his trap. Derek had prepared the terrain, choosing his spot carefully. A dead-end alley wouldn't allow them to escape, and it was so dim they couldn't see the tripwire he'd installed. The first 2 tripped and fell down hard on the concrete. Those behind them were so surprised, they never saw the lead pipe coming. Derek had come fully prepared. He used the pipe to beat them on the head, the side of the knee, even in the groin. When he'd finished with those 3, he started hitting the 2 that were struggling to get back on their feet. When he had them all moaning and sobbing on the ground, he used a small knife to cut the tripwire. Then he beat them again and again with the lead pipe, paying special attention to the nether regions. Derek knew this was wrong, but he didn't care. If the world was unfair, he had to make it unfair in his favor. He took out the taser he'd stolen from his father and tased them until they were unconscious. Then he stripped them, took out a marker, and drew dicks and words like loser and jackass all over their bodies. He took multiple photos of them. When he'd finished, he splashed them with a cold bucket of water and woke them up. "Sorry to ruin your nap, but I need your attention." The bullies woke up in so much pain they barely noticed they were naked and covered in drawn dicks. When they could focus, Derek showed them the images on his phone. "I made quite the scrapbook, even a short movie. The files are uploaded to my computer now. Wouldn't it be terrible if someone like, I don't know, me, was to upload them to the internet? You know what they say, the internet never forgets." The bullies started crying and begging. "Whenever someone searches your names, be it your grandma, your girlfriends, even some job you wanted, these photos would be the first thing to appear." "Dude, no! Please, I don't even know you! It was a favor for a friend! It was only a joke, please!" Their cowardice gave him goosebumps. Derek wanted to puke at their weakness. From this day on, you leave me alone. And you better pray that nothing happens to me. Because if I don't enter the password on these photos every day, they'll automatically upload. With that, he turned and walked away. Then he whirled around once more. Almost forgot. I threw your clothes in the dumpsters. Can't remember whose is where. If you don't want to go home with your dicks hanging out, you better start digging. So long, suckers. Derek returned home euphoric. He had never felt so proud of himself. Confidence that he could forget those jerks forever. Confidence that he could do anything with his life.